Thereby, the Fed now purchases over half of new Treasury debt issuance. And the interest the Treasury pays is recycled back to the Fed after, of course, the Fed takes a cut. But exactly how do the big banks profit from this arrangement? I asked Michael Maloney about just that, and here's what he said.
When these big banks, these primary dealers, show up at the Treasury auctions and buy a piece of our national debt, the debt that the public has to pay off through future taxation, and then the Federal Reserve whips up a bunch of currency from nothing and buys that from the banks, and the banks get to make a profit. Every time that they sell one of these bonds to the Federal Reserve, they're making a profit. So there's profit there. There's profit on the excess reserves that they're getting paid interest on now. And this is something brand new as of the crisis of 2008, the interest paid on their excess reserves. And then they're getting a 6% dividend on the stock that they own in the Federal Reserve, because these banks are the owners of the Federal Reserve. So they have a profit stream from three different ways from the Federal Reserve to these big banks that own the Federal Reserve. And wouldn't you love to own your regulator? Wouldn't you love to own the police in your town?
Yes. I'd love to engage in transaction with an entity, a.k.a. the Federal Reserve, whose mandate is to buy high and sell low. I'd like to talk to you now about the future of the U.S. dollar, since we're talking about the way the Fed supports it. We hit the debt ceiling. It's been raised. Can the U.S. dollar remain the global reserve currency?
Absolutely not. And this really started long before. It started with the crisis of 2008. It started with all of the emergency currency creation and the spending that the Bush administration actually started, and then the Obama administration just put it into hyperdrive. And it even started earlier than that, when Saddam Hussein started selling oil for euros. These were some of the first nails in the global dollar standards coffin. All countries used to need the U.S. dollar to do debt settlement. If a car dealer in Mexico that sold Mercedes wanted to pay Mercedes, they converted pesos into dollars, wire transferred the dollars to Mercedes-Benz, and Mercedes-Benz would then convert that into euros. Well, there's all of these bilateral trade agreements being made between countries all the time. Just recently, Singapore has now reached a deal with China to bypass the U.S. dollar. And so it's every single month, and sometimes every week, there's a new nail in the coffin for the global dollar standard.
So what is the time frame that you might be predicting for the loss of the dollar as a global reserve currency here?
Well, I have been saying for many years, and I wrote this in my book, that before the end of this decade that we're in right now, so before the year 2020, we are going to have a dollar crisis. This is going to lead to a global currency crisis, because the dollar is the majority of the world's value of all the world's currency. It's more than half the value of all the world's currency. And if there's a dollar crisis, I believe that people in other countries are going to look at their own currencies and say, oh my God, this is just a piece of paper with numbers on it also. And people will lose trust in fiat currencies. Now, to me, actually, the worst thing that could happen is that we go back to some sort of gold standard. A gold standard is a national currency that's supposedly backed by gold, and it opens the door for the whole scam to start again.
Based on your 2020 deadline, I know there are a lot of people who have gone broke trying to predict fat tail risk. Are we safe for another 6.5 years, or is this just a loose guideline or timeline that you provide?
Oh, that's very loose. I mean, this could be happening by next year. Okay. And one of the problems with this type of thing is, you know, when you look at currency crises around the planet throughout history, is in a lot of instances, it goes very, very slow until the day that it doesn't. And in many instances, you wake up in the morning and your world has changed. In Mexico, all dollar-denominated bank accounts were frozen and converted into pesos overnight, and then they devalued the peso. So you woke up with 70% of your wealth gone the next morning. This time after time throughout history, you see this thing where it's very, very slow, and then suddenly, wham.
And then, just like that, that was Mike Maloney of goldsilver.com and creator of the Hidden Secrets of Money video series. Now let's get to today's